Welcome to the second panel in our Cyber Trends 2025 series. I'm Kris Virtue, the VP of Cybersecurity at Qualcomm and co-chairman of the board for San Diego Cyber Center of Excellence, or as it's well known, CCOE. CCOE is a San Diego-based nonprofit that mobilizes businesses, academia, and government to grow the regional economy and to create a more secure digital community for all. Cybersecurity is now everybody's business. The FBI reports a 33% increase in cyber crime complaints across the industries last year, totaling a staggering $16 billion in losses. And the global cost of a data breach climbed to well over $4.88 million, according to IBM. And more than half of these costly attacks are aimed at small and medium-sized businesses, which, as many of you know, is really the backbone of our region's economic engine. Now, when you pair that with the global shortage of cyber professionals to thwart these attacks, to the tune of almost 500,000 openings in the US and over 5,000 here in San Diego alone, based on a report from cyberseek.org in May of 2025, just a couple weeks ago, becomes mission critical for everyone to consider how we address this universal risk. The good news is San Diego is leading the change with more than 1,000 cyber-related firms and the Navy's own Information Warfare Systems Command right here in the region. The overall cyber cluster accounts for more than 26,000 jobs and has a total economic impact of over $4 billion annually, which is equal to hosting 24 Comic-Cons, which is quite significant. This collaborative ecosystem is developing new technologies, defenses, and cyber warriors to combat the ever-evolving threat landscape. We've got a great panel here for everyone today, and we're going to tap into my colleagues' expertise here to talk about the issues facing everybody and some of the trends and what's shaping up for 2025. So it's my pleasure to welcome to our panel Patrick, Jason, and Rob. And I'm going to hand it off maybe to Patrick to introduce yourself, and then we'll just go down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Kris. Yeah, I'm Patrick Gould. I'm the Director of Cyber and Telecoms at the Defense Innovation Unit. We are a Department of Defense-led organization that sits in Silicon Valley, Boston, Austin, Chicago, and the Pentagon region in Northern Virginia that are expressly focused on solving military operator hard problems with robust, mature commercial solutions. And we do that through rapid onboarding, contracting, and making the process more commercially friendly for those solution providers that do have great products that could be used in military operations. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. That's probably a pretty challenging role at the end of the day. The Defense Department has a big mission, but it's pretty cool that the DIU exists. Jason, how about you next?
Yeah, appreciate it, Kris. Jason Thompson, I'm a security specialist here at Comcast Business. I have about 10 years in the cybersecurity space. I've worked for companies who were partnered with like Rapid7, and the list goes on with that. But my main role here is responsible for pretty much helping people understand that Comcast Business actually has a cybersecurity portfolio offering, and then making sure that we identify business pains that we can associate to our managed security service offering to the vast amount of customers that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And Rob?
Thanks, Kris. Happy to be here, everyone. Rob West with RSM. We're a full-service audit, tax, and consulting firm. I'm a managing director in our cybersecurity practice. I like to say my job is to help keep our clients out of the news. And I do that by looking holistically at all things cyber and privacy risk. Understand that difference between a technical security vulnerability and an associated business risk. Our practice here, our cyber practice here at RSM is over 250 individuals with all pockets of expertise around tools, technology, advising, implement, compliance, governance. And I like to say I'm kind of that glue that helps bring that together, ultimately to help our clients protect themselves from those cyber threats that are out there and keep them out of the news.
Awesome. So with that, why don't we kind of jump into this, and maybe Rob will start with you. But I think between really all the panelists here, like each of you guys are talking to lots of different individuals across lots of industries or government kind of agency or defense units. But when you're talking to those folks, as well as what you're looking at from your own perspective, what kind of cybersecurity threats, are keeping you up at night or should be keeping up your clients at night?
Yeah, great question, Kris. And I still think the answer is not changed over the years. I still see the biggest threat around that human component, around the phishing element that's out there. I will say that those attacks have evolved over time. It used to be organizations were getting an email from the prince of any country asking for them to deposit funds. Since then, these phishing attacks, these cyber crimes have got a lot more sophisticated. In a lot of cases, they're actually using AI now. And so these cyber threats are actually coming in the form of not that email from the prince of a country, but actually AI. You think you're getting a call from your boss, and whether it's a voice call or even an actual video call, a lot of times these deep fakes AI is being used to impersonate these individuals to trick whether it's an account payable or an executive into doing something that creates great harm for the organization. And there's lots of different ways to defend against that, just depending on what the attacker's goals are. But that human element continues to be, in my opinion, the weakest link. We as security professionals can help organizations implement controls, both preventative and detective. There's lots of new technology solutions out there. But at the end of the day, the people are the ones in many cases authorizing those payments or clicking on links that let those hackers or intruders in. And so that, in my opinion, seems to be the biggest threat that we see out there. Like I said, that the way that those threats are happening to organizations has changed, but it's still that human element, that phishing type attack still seems to be the weakest link that's out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of money involved in this, right? As I was kind of rattling off those figures in the intro, when you look at the size of the economic impact from just all of these cyber crimes, I mean, it really comes down to like, how do we extract money out of these companies? And, the easiest way is just trick someone into transferring you the money at the end of the day, right? In a lot of ways. But Jason, is that kind of what you guys are seeing as well at Comcast when you're talking to your customers?
Yeah, Rob, you're spot on. Chris, you're spot on. I will tell you, I was doing some research on a customer this morning that I'm going to be speaking to on Friday, and looking at their 10K, and it described exactly that. They suffered a breach. It was a phishing attack where they ended up wiring almost $500,000 to the threat actor. And when you read things like that, it's alarming. But it's been going on. Even when I was a practitioner, before I got into the cybersecurity space on the vendor facing side, phishing is still a problem. It's something that has not been solved because a lot of it is not just technology; it's the people in process as well. Do you have some sort of workflow internally to make sure that people can help identify whether or not they're looking at a phishing email, checks and balances, et cetera? But I completely agree. That's what keeps me up at night as well.
Yeah. And then Patrick, obviously, like I'm assuming the Defense Department is maybe less concerned about losing money, although that's probably a factor, but protecting our nation's kind of secrets and sensitive defense information. But what kind of conversation are you having about the threats that you guys worry about and what should be protected against?
Yeah, I echo, the sentiments from all the esteemed panelists here when it comes to the types of threats that we're seeing when it comes to phishing, personality-based, personnel-based, persona-based type threats. But the one thing that you alluded to that keeps me up at night essentially is when these effects land on a national critical infrastructure type device. So whether that's a ship, an airplane, a driving device, an autonomous system, power grid, you name it. Like when these are the ones being ransomed or these are the ones being targeted, we really have to make sure that U.S. defenses are enabled and in order to be able to get after thwarting those, preventing them, and ultimately getting left of bang when it comes to those types of events.
It's really kind of an interesting set of problems, right? When you think about like what happens when you ransom systems on a ship? Like, it's not something that a lot of people normally have to worry about in the industry, right? So it's a pretty unique set of problems you guys are having to face there. So which is a good maybe jump off point into the next kind of question, which is when we think about like, there's a lot of threat actor changes, a lot of innovation happening kind of on the attacker side on a daily basis to get around all these controls. We've got to do a lot of work across the industry to come up with new solutions and new defenses to stop all of these kind of new attacks, whether down at deep fakes with AI or some new strain of ransomware that's going to hit the ship tomorrow or something. But in your role at the DIU, you've got to be looking at a lot of just cool stuff across Silicon Valley and how these things can be used from a defense industry perspective. But like, what kind of innovation solutions get you excited these days, Patrick?
Yeah, so I'm in a very unique position where, we get to be on the buy side from the government, but doing it for what we call non-traditional, defense industrial providers. So looking at those that have been actively or inactively discouraged from working with the Department of Defense. And I think it was Rob who alluded to it earlier that there's a lot of AI enabled threats these days. What we're seeing that is extremely innovative and what we're getting a lot of demand to actually go try to find solutions for is much more on the AI enabled defensive side. So how are we combating these automated threats, these very personalized, very machine intensive threats, maybe like increased volume of threats with the same technology power that's creating those threats on the defensive side. So, we're providing processing at the edge, abilities for hunt forward teams, for hunt forward operations, for cybercom and cyber national mission force teams to be able to protect critical infrastructure using human augmentation or in some cases low level automation that frees up cognitive abilities for these operators and analysts to be able to do their job in the name of national security defense and critical infrastructure defense. So I'm most excited at this point about all of the automation, the AI, the ability to augment the tier 3, tier 4 level analyst and kind of replace the tier 0, tier 1 level analyst in the name of national defense and national security.
Jason, are you guys embracing kind of AI in the security team and to augment, capabilities and stuff at Comcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we do here at Comcast is we kind of partner with best of breed. Obviously, depending on who you ask, is the response you're probably going to end up getting on that. But we're partnered with, let's say, Central One from an EDR perspective, and obviously there's that static AI engine, the behavioral detection engine, allowing us to take a lot of our greenfield customers, let's say those that don't even have endpoint protection in place, fully operationalize that portion of their security stack, and then also have a stock offering that's wrapped around it. So now they don't have to troubleshoot those alerts. They don't have to go ahead and fine tune things and curate those particular items. We'll do that for them and also make sure that we are responding to anything that's left or right of a cyber incident or left or right of boom. So yeah, we're using AI a lot with that.
Yeah. How about you, Rob? What gets you excited about new innovations coming into the space?
Kind of along those same lines as what Patrick mentioned, and I'm going to point out the irony that we're both scared of and and thankful for AI along the way. But Patrick, to your point, I mean, the way I see this is our perimeter from an organization perspective is ever expanding. We have mobile users now more than ever. We have SaaS-based applications. We have everything in the cloud. And so it becomes harder and harder to protect our data. And so these solutions, these context-aware solutions like an Entra ID that can help protect users from themselves. So if for whatever reason they do fall suspect to some type of phishing attack, it limits the damage that can happen by these types of automated solutions that can really help protect users from themselves. So that's really what I'm seeing as kind of the forefront on the horizon. Those innovations is those context-aware identity solutions that can really help protect users from anything they're doing that may seem anomalous to their traditional activity.
It's funny. I think, for those of us who have been anywhere near computers in the IT kind of space, we probably all got in the conversation, at holidays or whenever else from family members saying like, hey, what do I do with this? I got a weird message on my computer. Is this bad? Kind of, can you fix this for me? How do I stay protected? I think the thing that most excites me is like as AI becomes a, personal assistant that's capable of all kinds of things, including, at some point helping people make good cybersecurity decisions. We can all be relieved of that responsibility Christmas time and say like, hey, just talk to ChatGPT or something. It'll answer those questions for you about how to set up your routers securely or something. But all joking aside, I think, there's this kind of concern at the end of the day. Like a security challenge is really these days about like a big data challenge in my mind, right? So in order to understand what's going on in even a small company and all the interactions that employees are having with suppliers, websites, software, everything else, trying to understand all those interactions, figure out what's really going on, where the risk is coming from, and how to protect it. It's a massive problem. And when you look at a company the size of ours, at Qualcomm, for example, it's a huge multinational company. Like, there's no possible way our security team can ever be big enough to really manage all of those interactions, right? And so, kind of AI brings the hope of this kind of never sleeping, ever present capability that can help make sense of these interactions and also be available to, hopefully provide helpful guidance and instructions for people to make better decisions when, they don't have a cyber professional like sitting right next to them, right? And so, there's a lot of pretty cool capabilities in the same way, like, it provides access to, I wouldn't say lawyers might not like legal advice, but you can get a lot of good, advice because these things are able to provide information on all kinds of areas. Like no one's ever going to be able to go to college to learn enough in depth of all these things, right? So um, when you think about how do we get prepared for all this stuff, right? Like I said, attacks are coming. We've been saying in the industry that, it's not if, but when. Um, like, what should people be thinking about this year that's on their radar? You mentioned deepfakes, Rob. Is that something that most organizations need to be thinking about, like how they're going to deal with that this year, or what else is on that list?
Yeah, just to kind of continue along this theme of AI that we have, we're talking about the threat landscape of AI. We're talking about the using AI to help defend against that. But now we're starting to see organizations use AI for a lot of different business cases. How do we control AI within the organization? What does that governance of AI look like? I mean, we all know that shadow IT is a real problem in a lot of organizations, and it's hard to control that. And you're going to have that same problem with AI that almost becomes more and more compounded as AI gets built into the business, built into security and everything else. And so, setting a structure on ethical use of AI, how to govern and control AI is really what I kind of see as the future. Everybody's excited about AI. Everybody's using AI usually to some extent. A lot of organizations are starting to adopt AI at a larger scale and embed AI into the business. But I can't say that all the organizations have a way to control and govern the use of AI. And so that's where I kind of see as the horizon on where everything is going. And there's certainly a lot of different ways to do that. We're all excited about AI. We're all love the capabilities about AI. We've just spent some time talking about that, but governing and controlling AI is important along the way, just to make sure that we're using this in a responsible to our organizations and to our customers.
Jason, are your customers, worrying about this, or are you giving them advice to kind of think about governance, or are you guys taking things in a different approach?
Yeah, typically we have a fairly large, with a customer base that could be a small mom and pop shop up to a large enterprise that may have, let's say, over 1,000 endpoints within their environment. They're not thinking necessarily about AI yet because they don't realize that a lot of the times some of the tools that they have within their environment as of right now have AI pretty much embedded in them, right? Um, I would say that the talking that we tend to do is kind of what I would was saying, threat actors are leveraging AI, so it would make sense to kind of combat AI with some sort of cybersecurity strategy, right? And we're talking more so of how we can pretty much leverage that technology because AI has been in the cybersecurity space for decades now. But leveraging it for good and kind of showing them, don't be scared of these things. Understand that this is here to help you, but you need the right people and process in place to make sure that the AI is doing what it should be doing. But no, we're not really talking about governance these days, but I'm pretty sure there will be a day where we do.
Yeah. Patrick, when you guys are looking at, all these solutions, I was just at the RSA security conference up in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, a couple of weeks ago. Literally every company, in their booth, if it has AI somewhere in their pitch, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
sure that's all you hear about every day as you're talking to pretty much every company up in Silicon Valley. But is governance kind of high on your list, or what people are looking for, or is it more of a scramble just to get AI solutions?
Yeah, it's kind of both. I mean, like from the official government side of my response, I mean, like we have new programs that are being introduced through whether it's Swift, the software fast track, or CMMC, the cyber maturity model compliance type efforts. Like those that can get on board with with those processes sooner, more often, and more effectively, like probably have a better chance of working with more traditional government partners. Um, but from a DIU perspective, like we want the best solution for the point solution, like point solution for the best defenses, given the customer need, given the ask, given the bounty, given the problem statement. So we'll find the best way to work with those providers, work with those solutions, and work with the companies that are providing those solutions to be most secure in whatever way they need to be.
Can I ask a question to Patrick really quick? Because you brought up a term that we hear all the time on a lot of our calls, and I'm sure you know where I'm headed with that. CMMC comes up a lot these days. And not to take this away from the AI portion of the conversation, but the US eyes on glass when it comes to stock operations, security analysts that are actually in the US versus using a stock that may have a global presence. Do you run into that a lot based on the conversations that you're having? And I've noticed that people will kind of say one thing, maybe an analyst or an auditor told them, you need to have US personnel watching those alerts, or they'll tell them, no, it's okay to, based on the level of CMMC they're trying to reach, it's okay to have a global presence from a stock standpoint. I'm curious if that comes up from time to time.
Yeah, it comes up from us, and honestly, like I don't speak on behalf of the CMMC program office from the Department of Defense perspective, but we do have to field a lot of these questions that you're asking, and that you're probably fielding as well when it comes to customer engagements. Ultimately, yeah, as long as the framework and the compliance checklist is being followed, there, like, we can get to yes. What we typically tell our providers that come to work with us and go through our process is, like, CMMC is great. It's a good starting point, but let's have additional conversations when it comes to actually, like, how are we operationalizing the security of the product, of the company, of the individuals that work at that company, and of some of the threats that they're going to see when they start to work with the government going forward.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I think, from my perspective, right, there's just an increased focus from all sectors on cyber controls, right? Whether or not it's compliance with CMMC, which, many of the companies in the San Diego region are super interested in right now, is trying to navigate those waters. I think, to your point, Jason, a lot of people trying to get cyber insurance. The controls are getting much more rigorous. The insurance companies, are coming in and expecting a certain level of baseline of controls. Rob, when you're talking to clients, where is that coming into picture? Are people having trouble trying to figure out how to build out enough controls to satisfy insurance companies in addition to the government CMMC, regulations, and what else you seeing that, goes beyond even those two?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll start by saying compliance doesn't equal security, and security doesn't necessarily equal compliance. And what I mean when I say that is, as we're talking about CMMC, as we're talking about PCI standard with credit cards, or we're talking about health data with HIPAA, a lot of times that's done on a portion of an organization's environment, whether it's the enclave in which you have government data, or your credit card or your cardholder data environment that you doing all your credit card processing. And a lot of times there's other aspects of the organization. We talked earlier about how organizations are more mobile. They're using more things in the cloud. There's more SaaS-based applications. There's the corporate network that might not be subject to some of those same compliance initiatives. But you still need to make sure, as I said at the onset, you're looking very holistically at security from a cyber perspective, understanding where your actual risks are, and then putting controls in place to help prevent those risks. So it is a broader conversation when you're talking about security. As we're talking about compliance, the reason you're creating those segregated environments is to ultimately reduce your compliance scope, to help be more efficient in maintaining compliance. And so how does this all weave and relate into, I'll call it cyber insurance? Yes, there's a minimum set of baseline standards that a lot of those cyber insurance carriers will put out there. We've seen those questions grow from back in the day. They were a few years ago, maybe more than a few years ago, they were, started with 10 or 15 simple questions. Now we've seen them upwards of 400 questions. And you also need to know and understand what type of coverage you're getting on first party, third party, and there's all different elements and components to that cyber insurance piece. I guess I'll just say, Kris, to your point, good cyber hygiene means and have a good understanding of your overall cyber program, whether it's compliance related, what environments there are, the difference between the technical risk and the business risk. And that's what we like to kind of praise is with our clients is looking very holistically. A lot of times security professionals will get distracted by the new shiny, fancy, flashy object. We've talked about a lot of AI on this conversation already. And it is very exciting, but we have to look holistically about security risk to be able to understand our posture and where we are as an organization.
You brought up a point, which is these questionnaires, right? Whether or not it's a contractual, compliance related thing that you've got to manage, or just the customer, maybe a large customer coming in, not even defense related, and they've got their security questionnaire, and they kind of overwhelm these small, medium-sized businesses, right? And a lot of times these individuals may not have an IT organization, may not have any security team, and they get this 300 question, questionnaire coming at them with all kinds of security details. Like, Patrick, when you're talking to all these companies, like, are you seeing kind of hope on the horizon? I know that there's kind of a use case maybe here for AI to like help people bridge this gap between how do we answer these questionnaires or show compliance to CMC and things. Like, is there technologies that you're seeing that are focused to help people in this space?
Yeah, there's a lot of automation that we're seeing when it comes to, either answering the checklist, filling out the questionnaires, like responding to the compliance, like being able to prepare the data that then goes into the compliance databases. There's plenty of stuff there, but we're also seeing a lot of automation capabilities that actually deliver autonomous cybersecurity solutions for small and medium-sized businesses that need them. There's a lot of again, like security augmenting type capabilities, but there's also a lot of lower level security replacing capabilities that we're happy to onboard for those that don't have their own security teams, those that want to learn more, those that do want to be compliant, want to continue to work with some of the highly regulated industries, whether it's defense like myself, or it's med tech, fintech, those types of areas and environments as well. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity out there for small and medium-sized businesses to play catch up, given the state of the industry right now, the state of the solution space.
And Jason, when you guys are acting as an MSSP for, say, companies that are interested in managing this, do you guys help them out with these kind of questionnaires that come in and these kind of challenges that they face?
Oh yeah. So One thing I'll say is I think all of us would agree cyber insurance, sometimes it's a gray area, right? And when I say gray area, a lot of the times you have certain insurance providers that will have a ranking or scoring metric internally to say, these are the type of EDR solutions you should have. Um, I don't know where they get those metrics from. It's kind of a mystery, but we do help our customers and let them know that our NDR service offering, let's say managed detection and response, may be similar to somebody's EDR service, or someone's EDR service may be similar to our NDR service. So there's a lot of um, education that is kind of trying to clear the noise in the marketplace to make sure that they identify the exact areas for that policy that they need to actually bring in to be able to maintain or reduce the cost of the deductible. And we do that almost all of the time if cyber insurance is a hard requirement for the customer base.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of good discussion on AI, how it can help. I think, the journal also gets a lot of folks who are probably listening to this that may be interested in becoming a cybersecurity professional. I think from all of our different backgrounds, we know that there's many different ways to probably end up in a cybersecurity related role. Um, from a large multinational company perspective, we've got all kinds of people on the team that comes from many different backgrounds, right? I have folks that come from a marketing background, more traditional technologies, 4-year degree in computer science, folks that have come out of the defense industry as a retired service member that transitioned into industry, into a cyber job, folks maybe with prior law enforcement, things like that. Stuff that you might think about is even a traditional way to land in cyber. But Rob, I love your story. Maybe if you could talk about your background and how you got into the cyber industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It started, I had my master's in accounting, and I got I'll call it the emphasis in information systems. I knew at the time I didn't necessarily want to do audit, and tax was out of the question for me. So I got into this information systems component, which was a lot of ERP type work that migrated into IT work, that migrated now into the cyber work. And I've been doing this for about 20 years now here at RSM, and I love it. And it's a lot about putting your head down, being enthusiastic, grinding, talking with clients, understanding if you don't know something, diving in deep. There are a lot of different elements to cybersecurity. That's such a broad topic nowadays. We've talked about AI threats. We've talked about MDR and XDR. We've talked about compliance. There's so many elements now to cybersecurity, and it's you have to be passionate about it at first, and then put your head down and grind and work through it. You connect with mentors that teach you things. I had the luxury to talk with clients, and I learned a lot from talking with my clients. And most importantly, I'm passionate about it. And I think that's the most exciting part. We've talked about all these threats. I didn't come in here and say my level of expertise is incident response or cybersecurity governance. I said I like to help keep my clients out of the news, because ultimately that's why we're all doing this, is to help protect the organization. And Kris, I actually thought during our prep and planning call, you made a really good point around kind of the cyber job, and how in some cases it can be challenging because you don't always get that satisfaction. I think it would be good for everyone to kind of hear your story and what you mentioned as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? Because I somewhat jokingly, maybe not even a little bit of truth in there, right? Like in my role, you don't necessarily know if you're doing a good job or not until you know, basically, right? And what it comes down to is, you come into work, you work all day, and if you go home and nothing's happened and you're not in the news, it's a good day. But you're also wondering in the back of your head, if something happened and we just don't know it yet, right? So you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so, it sometimes takes a certain type of personality to be kind of comfortable in that environment, I think. And if you're an individual who's focused on the intellectual curiosity of the challenge and the hunt, cyber is a very cool career, right? Like you really get a lot of exposure. Like at a large company, cyber touches every aspect of what goes on at the company, from employee details all the way up through business dealings and products and things like that. And so you really get I'd say a perspective that kind of rivals really any other role in a large company. But at the end of the day, you don't go home looking at the product that you just built or the furniture you just carved or whatever other kind of thing that sometimes you can get satisfaction. So you have to just kind of think about like what is the thing that brings you satisfaction. If it's looking at a finished product, cyber could be a tough job for you, depending on how you look at it. But if you really are interested in the puzzle solving kind of things, the intellectual curiosity, constantly learning about new attacks and defenses, and from that perspective, I think it can be a really fulfilling career. If you break things down into like, hey, I delivered the cybersecurity solution to somebody, there are elements of like success and you win deals if you're a salesperson selling MSSP services, for example, or Jason can say like, hey, we made a customer happy, right? There's obviously different pieces of that, but it is I think to your point that you made earlier, it really hinges on like, do you have the curiosity? The backgrounds can all bring an element which is super useful, but it comes down to like, do you like the challenge? You know, Patrick, when you're obviously working in an innovation kind of unit, right? Like, how do you even get that job? What do you guys look for? Like, what's your background?
Yeah. So I come from years of military cyber operations before coming to Defense Innovation Unit. But ultimately, like, yeah, we're looking for a good mix of exactly the type of things that you're talking about. So people that are problem solvers. They don't need to come from a technical or computer science background. There's plenty of opportunities within the cybersecurity space for those that just want to look at challenging problems every day, be motivated by the fact that the problem space and the solution space is changing daily, and then be able to make the connections and get after those and take the time to match up those problems and those solutions. The big thing from a defense perspective too, and national security perspective, is you don't have to move to DC to be part of the actual cyber fight. You could do it from your product offering. You can do it from your critical infrastructure defensive location. You can do it just because like you want to be tangentially connected to that, and you have a great product, a great skill set, a great team. There's so many opportunities outside of the traditional way that we think of national security when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber defenses, and ultimately, like, national security and critical infrastructure security, where people can get involved from wherever they are with whatever skill set they have, and with whatever product offering or solution offering that they have.
Yeah. For all the talk, I think of like, hey, there's all these unfilled jobs, and it seems like you should be able to just get a cyber job, like no problem, right? There's tons of openings. I could get a job in 5 minutes, but it turns out it's maybe not actually that easy to get noticed. Jason, I think on our prep call, you had talked about like, how do you get noticed, right? I mean, like, where do you go to get one of these, mythical cyber jobs?
Yeah, I can answer that question 100 different ways, but the way that it worked for me, in the way that we kind of discussed, LinkedIn, right? Uh, if you optimize your LinkedIn profile, chances are you have um, the ability to be found, right? And I know with my situation, and not to go down a whole list, but I worked for Rapid7, Varonis, ForcePoint, BlackBerry, Silent, Arctic Wolf, and now I'm here at Comcast. Um, the way that I found this specific job was that it found me. And someone from my team actually reached out to me, and not to knock anyone in HR or whatnot, or the AI gatekeeper, because it's challenging these days. Got to get past them, right? Uh, my application didn't even go through. It was submitted, and then they pretty much rejected it automatically. So thank you for artificial intelligence for that. But the team member reached out to me because he found me on LinkedIn, and he was able to get me past that AI gatekeeper. So at the end of the day, sometimes it's just making sure that you are publicly visible as far as your accreditations are concerned as well. I had Rapid 7 written in my profile, and Comcast was in the mix of potentially moving forward, which we are now partnered with them for their MBR service offering, and they wanted somebody with Rapid 7 experience, and I landed the job.
Yeah. I'd say that's awesome, and it's so true, right? I mean, you've got to at the end of the day understand kind of what are some good keywords to put on your resume to get through the filtering that probably most companies might have in place. But the other piece of advice I might have also too, there's a lot of associations and meetups and stuff in San Diego for sure, and I think really every city probably has these. Um, but kind of show up, get involved. If again, if you're passionate, hopefully this is an area that's going to be interesting to you in the first place. So go to an OWASP meeting, an ISSA meeting, product meetups or whatever you can find. Do some networking. That's probably the most effective way to get noticed and if nothing else, gain some experience as well too. But in the end of the day, even though there's a lot of job openings, getting yourself kind of in a preferable position probably a lot of times comes back to like, who do you know and who's there kind of putting in a good word for you, right? To some extent. The last thing I think we I want to just touch on real quick before we start to wrap things up. We kind of touched on our backgrounds, but just to maybe put a fine point on it, like there's a lot of different types of cyber jobs, right? And even when we talk about how many cyber jobs are in the region, it's not pen testing, threat hunters, SOC analysts, right? I mean, you guys are all in a cyber role. We all have different positions. We kind of mentioned, the different backgrounds, but like, you know, people that like public policy, for example, there's a ton of work being done to look at, writing new regulations. People need to go engage with our lawmakers to teach them what's going on in this space, help them craft these policies. I'm guessing, Rob, you spent a ton of your time on the other end helping people interpret this stuff. And so it's not all super techno, I've got to be knee deep in programming and all these things, right? When it comes down to it.
Yeah, completely agree. And I like the way Patrick used a keyword earlier. He mentioned operationalizing when he was talking about CMMC. And a lot of that is what we do in our compliance arena, from security compliance, whether it's a regulatory compliance, a third-party compliance program, or a contract compliance. It's helping our clients understand and interpret what that means. And in some cases, it might be on only a part or a piece of their environment and not the entirety of their environment. So there is a lot to that interpretation piece as well. And, when those new regulations come out, we as an organization are usually at the forefront. We're taking those, we're analyzing them, we're talking through internally, and we're helping our clients understand what they mean and how to comply.
And I think a little bit of each of what the three of you guys are doing at the end of the day is understanding the needs of the client. So what's the business need, right?
Yeah.
And then how do we align cybersecurity program tooling capabilities to fulfill those business needs, right? So again, at the end of the day, I think maybe it was you, Rob, I forget on our prep call, but it made the point that, we're not in our jobs for the sake of doing security for security's sake. We're here to enable the business to work in a secure manner and deliver on whatever the company is intended to deliver, right? So in that sense, a successful cybersecurity professional is going to be one that understands the business that they're working in and how to connect the cyber capabilities to support that business or defense capability, for example, or need of the agency, right?
Kris, that's a great point. A lot of this, what we do in our space, comes down to conveying and presenting risk to the organization and letting that business make that ultimate determination and decision. I had a call with a client, I think it was 2 weeks ago, talking about PCI compliance with them. And I'm a QSA talking about PCI compliance and the level of effort it was going to take to get there. And they said, well, this is great, but it only costs us $200 a month to not be compliant. And when you think about these things from a business context, they have to make that decision, but our job is to help clients, let them know and understand the risk, and having the business make that decision. There's certainly other elements to not being compliant than just a financial penalty. There can be reputational risk, other things that are out there, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, these are business decisions. Our job as security professionals is to present and convey that risk and work with them, align with them, facilitate those conversations to know and understand that path forward.
Awesome. Well, as we kind of wrap up the discussion, you know, maybe go around to each of you and just share some parting thoughts for the audience in terms of, you know, any good takeaways, maybe resources, or just things that they should maybe go back and talk to their teams about. Jason, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, and I was reflecting on the wide customer base. I'm on calls almost every day, right? And a lot of times people will look at Comcast and say, "Oh, you're a telco company. What do you know about cybersecurity?" Um, we know a lot about cybersecurity because a lot of times we have to secure the infrastructures, right? When it comes to the environment that you may have a circuit in, and so on. But one thing I would say is you can't learn it all at one time, right? If you're a business owner, make sure that you go ahead and identify the areas that you need the most help with. And if it is, let's say, prioritizing security or your IT budget or allocating some of that, know that there are businesses out there. A lot of us are representing those particular businesses that can help. And with us and what I do, I tend to try to identify the exact pain that I can solve for within that particular deal cycle. And I get more satisfaction out of helping, making sure I can offload some of that burden that that particular customer is feeling than I do actually receiving the commission that's associated with the deal. And that's why I'm in the position that I'm in now. But you don't have to do it all. Choose one area and try your best to make sure that you can own that area and make sure you're better off with that partnership or with the technology that you're bringing on board as a small business.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have already summed it up, but like I can reiterate. I mean, just like Jason said, just keep pushing, keep learning, keep questioning, keep taking current threat data and then applying it to current opportunities. Whether it's technical, operational, persona, policy based threats, policy based or not just threats, but vulnerabilities, learnings, fact finding, lessons learned, like just incorporate that into your daily life. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep protecting critical infrastructure. Keep protecting, all of our security systems, and let's just like move the industry forward. There's so many smart people out here we can learn from, and this constant quizzical desire to learn that I see in a lot of folks in this industry is what keeps me going, and I hope that that empowers others to keep going as well when it comes to just making this industry better.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, I would just say, staying vigilant, staying diligent on this. Cybersecurity is not a one and done type of thing. We talked about how those threats are evolving, how they used to be the emails from a prince and now they're AI and pretending to be your boss asking for money. And so to be able to protect against that, we constantly have to stay diligent. Just by buying a new fancy, expensive security tool, you have to configure it, maintain it. Just by hiring into a new position, you have to make sure that you're aligned with those business risks. If you're outsourcing a key function, now you're introducing third-party risk into the organization. So staying diligent around all things cyber, I think is really the best advice that I can give out there.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And I think you made a good point at the beginning, and something that I thought a lot about too. It's just really at the end of the day, it's about kind of continuing to be about the basics, the blocking and tackling, proper hygiene. There's a lot of cool new technology, a lot of terms, but really I think it still comes down to some of the basics of patch your systems, protect your passwords through MFA. But really, if you're a business owner, for me, it's figure out like, who's accountable for cyber risk within your company. You don't need to have an IT team. You don't need to have a dedicated CISO or security team, but someone in the company you should look at if you're the CEO and say, like, it's your role to think about it and consider it and plan for it and prepare for it. And maybe that could be as simple as, like you said, Rob, earlier, it's just another risk that is on the list of all the other risks that needs to be contemplated. And there's plenty of partners like yourselves, right, to help these companies out if needed to demystify it and really come up with some good plans. And with that, I want to thank each of you for a great discussion. Really enjoyed it. We invite all the kind of business owners and job seekers to visit the CCOE's website at sdccoe.org for more information and some links to free resources, including links to our cyber clinics, San Diego Cyber Clinic. This is kind of a really interesting capability we have here in the region. We partnered with some universities locally, and it's sponsored through Google and UC Berkeley and others to really bring kind of low cost and free cyber clinic capabilities to help particularly small, medium businesses, while actually giving university students some real good career kind of projects and work to do from their own professional kind of journeys. We also have a cyber career map on the website that can help job seekers kind of understand maybe map their background to potential cyber roles and opportunities, so that as they talk about, like, what do you put on your LinkedIn, how do you promote yourself, where do you go from here, and all these different kind of opportunities help you kind of make sense of the landscape. So thank you again, everybody, and thanks for our audience for joining us, and stay tuned for our next cyber trends panel in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.